thank you for everyone for coming out. It truly means so much that you've taken an hour out of your busy day to be here. And I couldn't be more excited about this and to have you here along for the ride. So I hope this conversation does justice to your incredible support, especially to EADA and Humberto, Oriol, the two Oriols, and all the communications team, Yolanda, everyone. And I'm just very thankful. Without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Momenters Makers podcast. Okay, now, I have the pleasure to welcome an individual that was once like all of us standing here today, a student here at EADA. Today, he's a global leader who has left his mark at some of the world's most renowned Fortune 500 companies and startups. At LinkedIn, he shaped GMT strategies for a $4 billion business. At PayFit, he helped the company achieve unicorn status. And at Amenities, he drove 4.7 growth and hit 10 million revenue while transforming their go-to-market strategy. Oh, and did I mention that he's a two-time top 100 marketing influencer in the world? Product marketing. Now in 2025, he's on a mission to empower professionals of diverse backgrounds to break into top tech roles and accelerate their careers without needing an elite MBA or years of experience. His tech journey has taken him all over, from Washington, D.C., San Francisco, Paris, and now Barcelona. I promise you, you're going to leave this conversation feeling inspired and ready to take action. Today, we'll learn how the incredible Yannick Kpodar made his own momentum happen. A lot of things. Perfect. First of all, thank you for being here. I already got the chance to kind of know you there, and it feels great. Especially to get a second guest of this magnitude it's really cool. So thank you.
It's a pleasure. Thank you. I really appreciate it, and thanks everyone as well for being here.
Yeah. I wanted to kind of set the stage first. So you've worked across 3 major tech hubs: San Francisco, Paris, and Barcelona. Led teams in startup, unicorns, and post-IPO companies. Today, you're building your personal brand while empowering professionals globally. How would you summarize this career journey in one sentence?
Epic. Epic roller coaster. Really, It's been like an absolute amazing experience, up and downs, but you learn so much, and I love it. So I would say just epic roller coaster.
That's what it feels like. Even the intro was way too long for me to say, but it's really cool. That's how I want my career to be eventually. So now I want to kind of take it back, since we already understand what you're doing now and what you did with your entire career. I want to take it back to the beginning of your momentum building journey. So you grew up in Washington, D.C., raised by international parents from West Africa, and you went to a French school. Yeah. So from a very early age, you experienced this level of multicultural knowledge that most people only get to experience in a lifetime. Yeah. How does this unique blend of cultures shape the way you view the world and your personality?
Honestly, it's an amazing question. It's been a really interesting experience growing up, because it's like, I was very multicultural. So like at home, I had African parents, right? And so I go to school and I'm pretty much in France, right? And then I'm in the streets and I'm in the US. And so you're growing up with so many different values. And I remember growing up, I never felt like American enough for the American kids. I never felt French enough for the French kids. And I never felt like African enough for the African kids. And so when I was younger, it was actually like, I felt like I didn't really know who I was. But as I got older, I realized that it was incredibly powerful, because it gave me the opportunity to be able to understand people from different walks of life across different parts of the world, to be able to speak multiple languages. And so for me, it's just been like an absolute game changer to realize that what I thought was like my weakest like link ended up being actually one of my strongest assets. And that's what I use in all my roles. And I'm doing international expansion, pricing strategies, global launches. It's literally because I grew up with that multicultural perspective. So that has really shaped who I am.
Nice. It's like a superpower. You grew up and you felt like it was something that set yourself apart, but that's such a good thing, and you can kind of realize it when you go forward with your career. So
absolutely.
That's really cool. How did the question, what about this one school in Paris, change your life moving forward?
Oh man, there's so much I can say here, but essentially like I grew up in Washington, D.C. I went to the French school, and everyone that went to this French school, Lycée Rochambeau in Washington, D.C., ended up going to Montreal and McGill University in Montreal in Canada. And so I was so sure that I would get into these schools. My brother was there, my friends were there, and so I applied to only these 2 schools. And you might guess what happened. I didn't get in. And I felt like it was the end of my life. I was like, I'm the only idiot that's not going to the school. Everyone's there. My brothers, my friends, and everyone else. And then I remember I was so sad. I was kind of like depressed. I was like 17 and a half or 18. And my mom came in my room and she said, Yannick, what about this school in Paris? And it was called the American Business School. And that one question just completely changed my vision of the world. I'm like, yeah, there's a whole world out there. Mm-hmm. And so I ended up applying to that school in Paris. I got in, and then the rest is history. Like, instead of going to Canada, I went to Paris, and from Paris, everything changed.
It's a big change.
Yeah, it was really big.
Another continent. And that must have had an impact on you, because when you got to Liverpool, you got to work president of Enactus, co-founding a red carpet management events company while excelling as a student. It's very impressive, but I wanted to kind of understand, how did you balance your time, and how important was it to get this kind of experience at such an early age?
Yeah, honestly, it's a good question. I mean, like, especially when I felt that rejection from not going to the school, I realized that, like, if I really set a goal, I actually have to take action to make it happen. Mm-hmm. And so I told myself, I'm no longer going to be a passenger. I'm going to be in the driver's seat. And anything that I want to do, I got to go out there and get the experience. And so instead of just being in business school or doing international business, I actually wanted to do business. And so one of my friends and I, we were both turning 21, mm-hmm. And we wanted to do like a really, really big event. And so we ended up building this massive event called 2121 Productions, when we basically launched our birthday. And then from there, we just ended up running more events and doing like a massive fashion show. And Enactus was kind of part of that, because it was a student business kind of community where you're running a lot of different projects to impact social services. And it was a lot of work, but it was honestly something that shaped how I manage my time, from being in school to actually doing real work, mm-hmm. that gave me experience. And so it was kind of like everyone. I'm going to school, I'm in class, and then after class, I'm getting my work done as quickly as possible, mm-hmm. so that I can go and then focus on the business. Yeah. And so my incentive for working on the business was to make sure that I just finished my work. Yeah. And so it was kind of like the way that I tricked myself to doing both at the same time.
Nice. Yeah. And did you get to experience like what's my limit? And did you achieve that limit, or was it like, I can do more. I can do more work and add something to the calendar?
It was interesting. Obviously, it was very fluid, because when I started with Enactus, is basically at the time it was called SIFE, Students in Free Enterprise, and so essentially how I ended up working with this social enterprise is that I started with 2 projects. I was one of the project managers, and then from 2 projects we grew it to 10 projects. We grew from 10 members to 100 members, and it really tested my ability to realize that if you dream big, it doesn't mean it's going to be easy at all. Yeah. But if you set a real big goal, it's really exciting, and you will be really, really surprised what happens when you start to get to work. And so for me, it really just changed my vision of kind of like understanding personalities, understanding cultures, and that's pretty much how actually even today, that's kind of how I lead. Is I lead through people, I lead through cultures, and I learned a lot of that when I was at Enactus in Liverpool.
Was that your first love for marketing and entrepreneurship?
Honestly, yeah, because it was really interesting to have an idea and start from scratch and actually kind of like make it happen and see what actually comes out of it. And I think that was really the beginning of having an idea, understanding what the market wants, and doing something different that doesn't exist.
Yeah, nice. So after you left the UK, and like most of us standing here today, you took your master's in 2011 here at EADA.
Yeah.
And in 2012, you left in the top 5% of your class, a 3.8 GPA, and won Best Master Management Final Project Award. What made you choose EADA, and how did your time here shape your career?
So there was a girl in the story.
There always is.
There always is, right? And so we went through a really bad breakup when I was in DC, and I ended up saying, you know what, I really want to just change my life, do something very different. Mm-hmm. And I decided to do a master's. And for some reason, I always wanted to come to Spain. I wasn't sure if it was going to be Madrid or Barcelona. And then I did research, and I picked Barcelona. And then from Barcelona, I was really understanding what are the different schools here. There was EADA, there was a bunch of others, and I just really enjoyed the interviews I had with EADA. Nigel Hayes was running the Masters in Management program at the time. I really instantly clicked with them, with Bibiana, with all those folks that are still here today, actually. And that's one of the reasons why that's one of the reasons why I actually ended up choosing EADA. Honestly, when I looked at the videos, the people, it was absolutely amazing, and honestly, it's changed my life.
Yeah, it sounds like you had a great time, and maybe we'll have a great time here in the future. Who knows?
Yes, don't party too much.
Yeah. That's a big topic here, I think. After you killed in your masters, and after that you spent 8 months of uncertainty. Can you tell me how did you navigate through it and stay motivated?
Yeah. Actually, there's a couple of things I wanted to say about the previous question as well, in terms of like winning and being like the top 5% and so on. So one of the things when we actually graduated, I think when we arrived at EADA, we actually saw the previous cohort that was graduating, and we got to see them on stage kind of like winning the final project.
Oh, cool.
And I remember I was sitting there with my buddy Philippe, who was also part of my cohort, the team, and we saw the students winning the award and raising the trophy, and everyone's clapping and everyone's happy, and I was like, I looked at Philippe, I'm like, I want that, right? Yeah. We need to really work, not because of the prize, but what it represents to be one of the very few to be on stage. Course, it means that you really worked your butt off. Mm-hmm. And so from the very beginning of when EADA started, our objective was we want to win the final project award. Yeah. And so from the very beginning, we took class very seriously. We came to every single class on time. We did extra work. We always raised our hands. And I think having a goal is very important because you don't accidentally achieve success. Like it doesn't happen by accident. You have to say, this is the mountain I want to climb. You have to rally the troops around you and the people who are also inspired to do that, and you have to get to work. I'm not saying it was easy, but I'm pretty sure that if we had not set that goal, we would not have accomplished it.
Of course, yeah. First, you got to dream it before you actually make that happen.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so to your next question about kind of struggling, and that was actually a really pivotal moment in my life because, I worked my butt off here at EADA. I graduated among the top in the class, won the Final Project Award. I was like, oh man, I'm going to go back to the US and everyone's going to want me. It's going to be like a great success story.
On top of the world.
And exactly. And it wasn't the case. I came back to the States and I was applying to jobs, over 100 jobs, sending cover letters and resumes and just getting rejection letter. And a big part is because I wasn't really connected to the ecosystem of in the US, right? And so now I think the brand of EADA is a bit different, but at that time, like actually penetrating in the US market that's really competitive wasn't easy to do. And so basically after kind of like 8 months of applying to jobs and not getting any interviews that were actually meaningful, meanwhile, all my friends who went to EADA who were in Europe or in LATAM were getting amazing jobs, consultants, this and that. And I was just, getting my butt kicked in the US, and I was like, I got to change this. And so that day, I decided that I was no longer going to apply to jobs, and I was going to have jobs come to me. And it was back in 2013, and I haven't applied to a single job since then.
Wow.
And that was the day that I moved from being an outbound sales person to being an inbound marketing focused person. Wow. Even though I started my career in sales, I think there was a shift. And I started to realize that LinkedIn is a search engine just like Google, and the name of the game is to get on page one. Mm-hmm. And so it's like, how do you get on page one? You got your traffic, you got like people staying on your page, you have like your website that's connected to other websites through referrals, which is like your LinkedIn connections. And so I just literally started to understand what the algorithm does, and I basically work with the algorithm, and my life changed. I went from 0 interviews in 8 months to 3 to 4 interviews every single day for like 3 weeks. Broke into Dell, and that was the beginning of my tech career.
Wow.
That it was a very painful time, those 8 months, but I think it was pivotal in becoming the person I am today.
Of course, it's shaped who you are today, and I think that's so important because nothing changes if nothing changes. Like you led the movement of change, and that's when the kind of the successful stuff happened. And maybe inside you also felt more accomplished, and I think that's really important. So you mentioned you landed your role at Dell Technologies, huge company, but you didn't have a tech background per se, and you're now working as such a tech-driven company. How did you adapt to that shift?
To working in tech at Dell?
Yeah, from not having that background.
Honestly, as long as you're hungry to learn, it's pretty easy. I mean, I was selling disaster recovery software to IT professionals. So let's say you're building burns and all your servers, everything's gone. How do you recover your information? That's pretty much what I was selling. Yeah. But typically, if you're in the right company, and maybe there's a few questions on this, but typically Dell is obviously a big company. Even though I was in Dell Software Group, which was acting as a startup within Dell, there was a really good onboarding experience where you get to understand the product and market and so on. But There's actually one thing, and I know there's a question on this, but there's one thing that I learned at EADA that really, really helped me, and it's called the 5 C's of marketing analysis. And essentially, you study the company, you study the context, the competitors, the channel, and then I forgot now what's the 5th one. But essentially, because I'm on the spot. But essentially, I go through the 5 C's of marketing, and that's exactly what I did to kind of study when I joined Dell. I was like, okay, what's exactly is the company, the product that we're selling, who's the customer, what are the competitors in the market, what's the channel that we have, and just kind of it really helped me understand the business I was operating in, and then it helped me move a lot faster. Yeah,
because that's cool, because I think you mentioned once that instead of acting like an employee and I'm going to do my job, you started acting as if you were a leader, even if you weren't at that position. If you kind of say to yourself that I'm going to do impactful things and I have control over what I do, just that mindset shift is so big. And I think even the people who are in charge, they'll see that and they respect that so much because someone's leading that shift, and that person was you in Dell, for example.
Yeah, it makes a big difference. I think especially at LinkedIn, I really embodied that because I remember when I joined LinkedIn, obviously it was a big organization already. And one of the things that they told me, and I know we have maybe some questions on that, but they told me to kind of like stay in my lane and just kind of like learn what I had to learn in this job. And I was like, no, but I really want to understand how the entire business works. And so I ended up spending a lot of time talking to different functions to know more about the business. Nice. And so I always do that because you will have people that will just want to put you in a lane, and you have to just really come in, really thinking like a CEO and understanding how does a business operate, because this is your time, especially when you're in a structured company, to learn as much as possible. Because when you go into a startup, it's very chaotic, and they want people who can organize the chaos, whether it's creating processes and so on. But if you've been in these big companies and you haven't taken the time to understand how do we take our product to market, how do we train the sales team, how do we launch these campaigns, then when you come to the startup when everything is scrappy and they don't know what's going on, like you won't be able to help as much as you could have. Yeah,
that's cool. The knowledge that you gain in one of them translates to the chaotic one in the future.
Exactly.
That's nice. Before we get to LinkedIn, I really want to ask this question because I think everyone is so fascinated about Silicon Valley. And you have this amazing job, the job that you've probably been dreaming of. You live in a great city, but there's kind of like this itch that's something that's scary but also super exciting. Can you walk me through your main emotions in deciding I want to move to Silicon Valley?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's quite known that Silicon Valley is a massive tech hub that is kind of like home to so many unicorn startups and success stories, like rags to riches, coming from nowhere and working in your garage and building something that's $1 trillion worth. And so for me, when I was working at Dell, I got a glimpse of what it is to be in a startup, but it was within a big organization. And so I really wanted to actually go and join the world of startup. And it was a lot rockier than I had expected, because not all startups are created equal. They don't all have great leaders. They don't have great finances. They don't have great products or go-to-market strategy. So I became really good at understanding how to pick the type of startup to join. Oh, nice. Sometimes you have companies that are very toxic, and you have to be able to sense that in your interview as well, because then you're in the company and then you realize that. So I think, the experience, I don't know how much you want me to go into it, but I mean, going into Silicon Valley was a dream. Honestly, when I arrived, I was like, oh my God, I thought I would just like touch the ground and it would be gold or something, I mean, it's really insane. When you're walking in the streets, it's like, everyone's walking around with their jackets or their backpack from Slack or Google or Facebook. It's like literally all tech. You go into Starbucks, and like everyone's just coding the next Facebook or whatever. And there's always a cocktail event and someone's trying to pitch something to an investor. It's just insane. It's really just this ball of just tech energy in one single place. Nice. If you're not in tech, you don't feel like you belong there.
It's almost the New York for tech. Like everything's moving so fast. And that's
exactly.
So cool. That excites me. I had a question exactly like that because I wanted to know, is it as sweet as the entrepreneurial dream makes it out to be, because everyone has this dream. I'm going to go to Silicon Valley and I'm going to make $1 billion business. I'm going to join this huge startup and make it big. And how is that like? Is it exactly like you dreamed of?
Honestly, now there's so many tech ecosystems around the world that you don't need necessarily to be in Silicon Valley anymore. You have Paris is a massive tech hub. Barcelona is actually growing like a good tech hub as well. You have London, so you kind of even Berlin. So you kind of have quite a few spots that are growing across the world. Mexico, things like that. But yes, for sure. I mean, if you're going into Silicon Valley, the competition is high. The expectation is even higher, and you're working you're brought off. I wouldn't say you're there to have fun. You learn to learn as much as you can. So if you have the opportunity to go to Silicon Valley, spend 3 to 5 years there and just like really learn so much about how the best of the best work, then you go back to other regions of the world and it's just an absolute game changer.
Of course,
You're literally the difference everywhere you go.
Because that touches a little bit on what we talked a little bit ago about having this balance. Sometimes the balance is going to be totally off and you're going to have those grind moments where you're just learning, maybe not paying as much attention to the other things that are also important, but you have to have those times where it's almost only work and only learning, which is super exciting, but it's of course it's short term.
Yeah.
It's needed, I think.
No, for sure. I think there are different phases of your life. There are phases where you're really learning as much as you can. You're reading books, you're going to events, you're attending webinars, you're doing all these things. And then there are phases of your life where you have to take action, where, okay, you got to stop hiding behind books, hiding behind courses. You got to get action now. And then there's phases of your life now where you need to, make an impact and earn. Right, and so just to be able to understand which phase you're in and whatever you're in, make sure you're all in it.
Yeah, you can read everything about learning how to ride a bike, but if you don't actually try it, no way you're gonna know how.
No,
to
but
ride
exactly. Honestly, it's a really interesting analogy, but it's really true. It's like at some point you're studying, great, and then at some point you just got to go and take action.
Yeah. While you were in Silicon Valley, you're in the proximity to some of the greatest tech minds, not only of this decade, but this century. Yeah. Was there any encounter or lesson learned that kind of had a long-lasting effect on you that you kind of took on till today, maybe?
Yeah, there was someone I met, and by the way, I think also one of the things I realized is that people in Silicon Valley aren't necessarily, as absolutely amazing as they are, are made out to be. At the end of the day, they're humans like everyone else. It's just that they've been trained very well. A lot of these folks come from top consulting, from top companies, from Google, Facebook, so on. So they've just been trained very well. But if you go there and you get trained like them, it's the same thing. And that's one of the things I realized actually when I went into like the LinkedIns and so on. Now I forgot your question. Can you say that your question one more time?
If there was any encounter or lesson learned that had a long-lasting effect.
I think one quote that someone said, and I can't remember who they were, but it was like, work until your idols become your rivals. And it just completely changed my life, because obviously you're looking at your idols, you're admiring them, like whatever it is, whether it's business, finance, yoga, and then to be able to work as much as you need to get to their level became a motivation to a point where they actually even become a rival, because you're now, doing the same thing they are at the level they are. And that completely changed my life. I would look at people who were senior directors at LinkedIn. I'm like, that's where I want to be. And so, I went on to starting to learn, to take courses, to take projects, to get visibility, to make sure that I got to that level. And then a few years later, here I am, global director in Paris at PayFit and things like that. So, having this mindset that it's great to have idols, but don't just stare and, and gaze and just stay where you are. Actually look at the gap and see how you can close that gap. And that is one lesson that I got. That's the kind of mindset that you will have in Silicon Valley, where people are really dreaming big, thinking big, and they want to take massive action. And that's one of the quotes that have stayed with me since then.
I feel it already. I'm ready to get pumped.
No, I'm not saying it's going to be easy. You will get your butt kicked, but it's just the mindset that really counts.
Oh, that's really nice. So you mentioned LinkedIn, and you got there after the company was acquired for $26.2 billion by Microsoft. And I had to double check that, because that's an insane number. So it's safe to say that you're working at one of the biggest companies in the world, right around the time where the spotlight, or the height of the spotlight, was the highest. What's the energy like in that kind of environment?
Yeah. Well, a lot of people got really good paychecks. And so a lot of people were celebrating and were happy. Some people were also concerned that LinkedIn now, needs to operate within the ecosystem of Microsoft, and we're going to change and so on. But honestly, Microsoft and Satya Nadella, they did a really good job at letting LinkedIn be LinkedIn.
Nice.
And so honestly, not much actually changed at LinkedIn. We actually just got access to Microsoft's kind of like servers and just technology, so we can move faster and do some really interesting projects. But it was the acquisition itself was really exciting. I came right after it, and I ended up getting Microsoft shares too, because I joined LinkedIn right after that. But it was it was fun. It was a fun experience. I think it's also a time where maybe the energy at LinkedIn did shift from more of an entrepreneurial to like a massive business that's really structured and so on. So I do think by the time I was there, a lot of the entrepreneurial people from the beginning were starting to leave because they had gotten paid, and then they were kind of moving on to other things, starting other businesses and so on.
Yeah.
But for me, it was still a good learning experience to just kind of see how things are done at this scale and at this speed.
Nice. Let's talk about your interview process.
Yes.
Because you got there with no experience in product marketing.
Yeah.
The people that wanted the job as well, they had a lot of experience in product marketing and probably at the most competitive tech industry in the world. Yet you left and you landed the job. Yeah. How was your approach to standing out against that kind of level of competition?
Wow. Yeah. Honestly, you just have to have a crazy dream. It all starts with that. It's like that what if question. What if I could actually land that job is really the question that piques curiosity and gets you into action. But then you do need to have a plan. So for example, I was working in sales. It was the first half of my career was actually all in sales. And then I realized I wanted to pivot to marketing. And so I ended up reaching out to people who were already working in marketing so I could learn about their experience there. And then from there, I ended up just basically reaching out to one of the senior directors at LinkedIn, who basically agreed to meet for coffee at LinkedIn, the LinkedIn Tower in San Francisco. It was absolutely amazing. I had my cup of coffee. He had his cup of coffee, and we were chatting with amazing view. And I learned a lot just from what he was saying. And then he loved my story, and he asked me to interview. And then I had pretty much 2 weeks. I didn't even know what product marketing was when I was getting ready to interview. And it was just doing so much research, YouTube videos, courses online, Udemy, Coursera, whatever I could get my hands on, speaking to as many product marketers in the Bay Area, just reaching out to just have coffee chats and just trying to close that gap. And that's pretty much what I ended up doing. And then at some point you have a case study, and I just absolutely nailed the case study because it was about how to launch a product internationally, and there was a big part about sales, and I had been in sales. And sometimes you might think, oh, because I haven't done this function, I might not be good, but actually there was a lot of transferable skills that applied to product marketing. And so absolutely just tore that case study, and it was great.
Cool. I have kind of a selfish question now because you worked at LinkedIn and you have this video that blew up. Everyone should go check it out on how to create a killer LinkedIn profile.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you, what's like one thing that we can change on our profile that people don't really talk about as much?
Yeah, that's a very old video, by the way, but it has over 100,000 views. It just absolutely took off. It's crazy, organically. I would say, listen, you have to look at LinkedIn. It's a search engine just like Google. And so your tagline is your SEO, right? And so you have to make sure that you're optimized to have the right keywords there. You have to make sure you have a great picture. Obviously, we know that now. But your entire profile needs to be really optimized in terms of action verbs, metrics, and you're starting to see that more and more. But the biggest thing is how you're able to grow traffic on your LinkedIn, and that's about connecting with a lot of other profiles. So I spent a lot of time looking at EADA alumni, people from my previous companies, and just connecting with them. Because the more you're connecting, the algorithm is pushing you up as like a website, like a profile that has authority. And so understanding the name of the game, that it's an algorithm that you just have to beat or play nice with. And once you understand that, then you get to play the game. You see your profile as a website, and your objective is to get as much traffic as possible on your website and to have them stay as long as possible. So that means having videos, having links, all these things you need to have on your LinkedIn profile to make sure people stay on it. And then when you start posting, people start seeing you. Right? And so those are kind of like the few tips that I would recommend that you really hone, because once you do it well, then your profile will always rank up on page 1.
Yeah, nice. You always said that the whole world is like your home. And you left the US and you joined PayFit, which was like in this hyper-growth stage. And later on, after you joined, you helped them achieve unicorn status. What's the biggest takeaway from scaling a company at that level?
First of all, it's teamwork. Right, you don't do it alone. There's a lot of different people helping you. There's a lot of different functions: product, marketing, sales, customer success. So you have to play nice, play well. You have to have cross-functional leadership skills across multiple countries. Really understand them: the Spanish, the Italian, the Portuguese, the German. They're all very different, but you have to find what brings people together, or else they won't make it work. But I think the biggest thing is just like, we had amazing leaders who focus on hiring amazing people and getting out of their way. Because a lot of
Nice.
times you see companies who hire great, talented people and then they tell them what to do. No. Like, you hired great people so they can come together and build the plan.
Yeah.
You have the strategy, you have the objectives, but let these guys build the plan. That's exactly what we did. And I think there's a lot of testing, right? We had one great product. We had to go from one product to multiple product. We were going good in 1 or 2 countries. We wanted to go to 5 countries, right? And it's just massive complexity. And so the more you can align teams together to say, here's what we're going to do, and everyone works at the same beat, the easier it is to achieve your goals. And so team sports is something I've always advocated for, because you get to learn how to work as a team. And honestly, the best people I've seen in tech are the ones who've played sports in their lives.
Yeah, it translates massively.
It's really funny, but it does. A lot of them, they've been in team sports or individual sports, and it shows when they're in the business world.
Nice, because it's funny because you were successful in PayFit, and then the hunger for startups kind of kept going a little bit, and you joined Amenities in Barcelona.
Yeah.
And you moved here. And you helped the company grow massively and achieve 4.7 growth and 10 million in revenue. What are the strategies to achieve those kind of results?
Yeah, there's a lot. I mean, we can go through a whole business class here for sure,
Yeah.
but I mean, a big part of it is just testing as fast as you can. Different go-to-market motions, inbound, outbound, partnerships, paid ads, organic, and so on. And one of the things we did is we had a lot of young people, and we ended up kind of like moving away from your old corporate kind of ads to bringing our salespeople in front of the camera, making it conversational, bringing jokes, and just making it a little less informal and more personal.
Oh.
And that absolutely took off, because now people are scrolling and then they see your ad, they actually click on it, and that's what made the difference. Our cost of acquisition of leads went from over 150 euros per lead to 25 euros. That's a massive difference.
Yeah.
We went from generating like 1,000 leads to over 6,000 leads, right? So in one single like quarter, and so that makes a massive difference. It absolutely catapulted our growth, and we also improved all the sides of the function of the funnel. But I'm not going to go into that. But long story short, test fast and track what you're doing.
No, it's important for us to, because we haven't gone very specific and specialized in that kind of environment, but it's really cool to learn, even if it's just a little bit of what you did in marketing, because you're such an influential person in marketing. It's really cool to learn. But I think we talked about your path, but we left out probably the most important part, your personal brand, which is centered around empowering unrepresented professionals break into these top leadership tech roles.
Yeah.
Why is this mission so important to you?
Yeah, and I know we're getting close to wrapping up. I think for me, it's just I've always noticed that there was less diversity the higher up you go. When you go into these big companies, typically, 3% will be Latino, 5% will be Black, and everyone else pretty much looks the same. And typically it's just because people haven't had access to these opportunities. And so even when I was at PayFit, when I was here at Amenities, I'm always kind of like the minority in the room, like every single time. And I really realized that a lot of the reasons why people are not here is because they just hadn't had access to the mentorship. Yeah. They haven't gone to the Harvards or to the Stanfords. They don't have the networks and so on. And so they don't know how to get there. Yeah. But once you actually get in these rooms, you realize that these people around you are not that special. Yeah. Right? Obviously, they're good, they're strong, they're trained well, but you can be as good, if not better. And so that's why I'm really, really passionate about teaching people what it takes to get there, like the exact steps, how to interview, how to position yourself, how to negotiate salary, how to make pivots, how to relocate across the world, because it's possible. It doesn't mean it's going to be easy, but it's possible. And one of the biggest things people just don't have is a mentor. And they don't have people who've actually done it who can show them how to do it. And so it's kind of like the passion that I'm focused on now. And then when this mission is completed, I'm actually in the process of raising money to launch another company. Oh, cool. But that's going to be kind of like your whole startup founder raising capital thing, which is like a 10-year run. And so before I do that, I really want to focus first on getting this project out. And so I have a couple courses coming out soon. Yeah,
so your focus now is Kpodar.com.
Exactly.
And I wonder what's next for you, and what do you want people to leave this interview? And the work that you did, what do you want them to think?
This interview, just in general, is just like, dream big, honestly. The thing is that most people fail in life not because they aim high and miss. Yeah. They fail in life because they aim low and they hit. Okay. right? And so
Stagnant.
they stay there, and then 10 years goes by, 15 years goes by, 20 years go by, and they wish that they had done more, they had gone after their dreams. And so I've seen a lot of people my age or older who are really bitter because they knew that they had a book in them, a course in them, a product in them, a business in them, that they didn't do it because it was scary. And so I would say just kind of like, aim high, because even if you miss, it's really corny, you hear that all the time, you're still among the stars.
Hell yeah.
Right? And the personal growth you get from it is just absolutely amazing. And so it's not easy, but it's worth it.
How do you see the mission evolving over the next 5 years?
Scaling really fast. I think right now I'm starting with the US market, then I'm going to expand to Europe and Asia. And then once I'm done, I want to do it in French, English, and Spanish. And then once it's done, I will then pivot to building the startup that I'm interested in building.
Cool. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah.
And there's such important learnings here. Even if you're not a student, if you're someone that is already mid-career, and there's such valuable advice. So I really appreciate you just taking your time to be here today and be with all of us, because we need it. We need to learn, and we want to.
Thank you.
So thank you for that. I
Thank you
really
very
appreciate
much.
that. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe.